The thing I believe that people maybe should know is that it's not a continuation of the New York story.
That's right. When you make a sequel, especially one that's separated in time so far from the first one, we assume that the audience out there, most of them haven't seen the original film. The new audience is seeing this as if for the first time. So we had to create an entirely different world for ourselves and a different story, but the one that the people who have seen the first one can still appreciate. So that was our kind of balance.
After DEG went belly up, a sequel to Escape from New York died as well, and for about 5 years, the idea of Snake's return didn't exist. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest you see our Part 3 video before watching this one. Anyways, this changed after the riots of 1992 and the Northridge earthquake of 1994 in Los Angeles. Kurt Russell felt inspired to return to Snake and reached out to Carpenter and Deborah Hill to bring the character back to life. John was still cautious about sequels and cited Kurt is the only reason he made the film. Snake Plisken was a character he loved and wanted to play again. I used his passion to do the movie to get him to write more. Originally, they wanted Donald Pleasence to return as the president, and that would have been awesome. Pleasence was very ill and would die before Carpenter finished his first script, which was dated June 23rd, 1995, and this was that draft. It started with the standard monologue, and we cut to New Las Vegas in 2013, where Snake Plisken and a fat man take turns drinking dangerous toxins. The fat man loses, and then there is an old Western-style duel, and crowds go crazy when Snake wins. Snake collects his winnings as the victor and leaves. He runs into a cigarette girl who suspiciously scratches him and draws his blood. Then armed police show up and Snake is captured. Pretty much everything happens the same way as it did in the final film, and there are tons of additional dialogue in the script for world building. I will say that this script took Snake more seriously and the world he was in. There was little camp. We also learned that the president's daughter has an anti-kidnap chip that is implanted in her arm so Snake can locate her just like the president from the first film. He enters the sub and gets to L.A. with the clock ticking. After running into Pipeline, Snake then finds himself in the middle of a battle between a hooded gang of whites called the KKKs and a literal black cowboy gang. They war with each other, and Snake helps the black cowboys. Snake then arrives in downtown by the Capitol Record building and finds Cuervo Jones's motorcade. Like the film, Snake commandeers a bike. Instead of flying his bike like a superhero to the back of a truck, Snake commandeers a horse and drags a biker by the neck behind the steed before he has a fist fight with Cuervo, who knocks Snake off the car, and the leader escapes. Snake heads to Beverly Hills, where he runs into the plastic surgery gang. While captive, he runs into Teslima, who gives gobs of exposition like the movie, and the two escape into the sewers where they meet Bob, who gives them a lift in his golf cart to an underground enclave of Hispanic men, women, and children living the best they can. Bob points Snake and Teslima the way to Venice, and on the way, like the film, she is shot dead. Snake finds himself in the middle of another gang fight when Eddie of the Stars shows up to save him. However, Eddie captures Snake just like he did in the film. Snake wakes up in a terminal at LAX, which is the base for Jones. Jones and Snake actually talk, and we learn that Cuervo actually supports a lot of people who are lost and starving, and that it's his motivation to liberate them all. He even tries to ask Snake to join him. Cuervo is later seen trying to negotiate with other gang leaders to join his crusade to free all of the prisoners in L.A. And it was terrible that these things were not in the final product. In this version, Snake actually captures Utopia and the prototype and tries to escape in the sewers. Utopia pleads with Snake to let her keep the prototype because she believes in Cuervo's cause. But then Eddie shoots Snake and he falls, dropping the prototype. Cuervo arrives and we see that he is not such a good guy after all when he slaps Utopia and says, "You fight till you're dead. Then I forgive you. Understand?" Snake washes down to Pipeline, who tells Snake to go to Hershey for help, as she is connected to the Black Cowboys. Then Snake does the dumb surfing scene and happens to end up alongside Eddie and jumps to Eddie's vehicle. They meet Hershey at the Queen Mary, and they soon take off in hand gliders to reach the Magic Kingdom, which is called appropriately Bankrupt City. Oh, John, how you could so predict the future. Anyways, in this script, helicopters are on the ground, sent by the government to ferry Cuervo and some of his people out per a negotiation deal. Snake and his team arrive and fight to a helicopter just like the movie. Yet in this version, when Snake gets to the air, Cuervo follows them in another helicopter. Somehow, Cuervo jumps to Plisken's copter, and the two fight while Utopia tries to fly the craft. It is Eddie who actually shoots Cuervo, killing him in the end. The copter is going down, and Snake tells everyone to jump before it crashes. The fates of all the copter occupants is left ambiguous, except for Snake and Utopia, which would have worked better in the film. The police surround the area, and Snake asks for his injection, but they laugh since it was fake. He then gives them the phony disc and walks away, a free man. The moment he walks away was so important to keep in the film because the finished product has Snake asking for a serum when he's not even there. And there was zero indication that Snake had any idea he was duped. He looked at his timer up to the last minute. By being a hologram, he could have died if the disease was real. Instead, they just ignored this completely and went for the flashy hologram ending, which didn't work, in my opinion. As Snake walks away, he sets off the EMP across the world, and while the police panic, all of L.A. prisoners begin climbing out of the prison by any means available. Then the movie fades to black. Though similar to the final product, this was a better version than what we got. Now, it's obvious there were elements borrowed from the Coleman Lux script, like the character of Blandish Vox, who is the exact blueprint of Teslima, as well as Johnny Lorder, who transformed into Eddie. There were also little elements, like the blanks scene, the Queen Mary, and the Disney World gathering at the end of the film. So Carpenter took those elements and built around them to make his own story. Starting on the July 1995 script, you can see Kurt Russell got credit on the revised first draft. And from here on, more humor and light-hearted tones were added to the film. As to who and why these decisions were made, I will not hypothesize. The more humor that was added, the less focus on other characters besides Snake occurred. They also didn't worry about copying Escape from New York. As you have seen in the interview at the beginning of this video, Carpenter was trying to roll out a new film for new audiences, and hoped the older audiences would tag along and accept it. In the end, the focus on Snake and the humor would eventually hurt the final product, because characters like Cuervo Jones, who was originally a deeper character, became a flat villain of the week that says predictable stuff like,
"Nobody rolls into town and disrespects me. Not Snake Plisken, not nobody."
Now, there are other examples of character loss as scripts moved along, but you get the idea. Filming started on December 11th, 1995, and would end on March 20th, 1996. Of course, with Carpenter, Hill, and Russell at the helm, it was a very smooth shoot with no drama or studio intervention. Escape from L.A. was released on August 9th, 1996 during a very entertaining summer, with a memorable film released almost every week. Twister, Mission Impossible, Dragonheart, The Rock, The Nutty Professor, Independence Day, and A Time to Kill came out just before the Escape sequel, and it was a very lucrative year for Hollywood. The week before Escape from L.A. was released, the summer was showing signs of slowing, though A Time to Kill, Phenomenon, and Independence Day were showing strong. Most movies came and went pretty quick, and the week of August 2nd was no different, consisting of Chain Reaction, Emma, Matilda, and Fat Beach. On August 9th, the only film released with the Escape sequel was Jack, which fared fine, but would have done better if it was a better movie. Escape from L.A. started out disappointing. It landed in the 4th spot, making only $12.8 million underneath Jack, A Time to Kill, and Independence Day. The following week, August 16th, several films were released, and like the weeks before, they would not last long. These films were House Arrest, Alaska, The Fan, Kansas City, and the more successful Tin Cup. Up against these new films, Escape didn't do that well. It dropped to the 6th spot and lost 50.9% of its ticket sales. It seemed evident that the cult following this film had came out for Escape too, but general audiences did not. The last week Escape from L.A. would be on the top 10 was August 23rd, when Carpool, The Island of Dr. Moreau, She's the One, The Spitfire Grill, and a very Brady sequel were released. Escape dropped 52.7% of its audience and landed at the 11th spot, showing that word of mouth and interest was not strong for the sequel. Escape would eventually make a paltry $25.4 million on a $50 million budget, making it a bomb. The merchandise for Escape from L.A. was not abundant, but there were some t-shirts, posters, and a soundtrack, which I still listen to when I'm in a good mood today. I prefer the Escape from New York score, but the soundtrack for LA is more jovial and fun and fits whenever I'm in such a mood. I would highly recommend the sequel soundtrack just as much as I would the first. As for me, I saw Escape from LA at a great time in my life. I was very optimistic at this time as I had just built my life back up in Toledo, Ohio. I was pretty much enthusiastic about any movie at this time, and I was avidly following Hollywood events with my Entertainment Weekly and Premiere Magazine subscriptions. I also watched E! Entertainment Television when I could, and I even documented box office numbers religiously. I had kept track of box offices since the 80s, and I haven't stopped. And this kind of accounting is one of the reasons why in every movie I cover, we always have the box office numbers. When I first saw the film, I wasn't as critical as most of the audiences out there who were asking questions like, was this a reboot? Was it a sequel? Was it a comedy? What the hell is going on here? I think a big factor in liking or disliking the sequel is based on the expectation of a sequel versus the expectation of a director. Carpenter is on record hating sequels, and he doesn't want to do something the same way. So he automatically changes the style and approach to differ sequels from where they came from. As far as he was concerned, Michael Myers was over after the first Halloween, but a crap pot of money and legal affairs caused him to write 2. For 3, he went after his real desire and changed it all and intended for it to stay that way. But when he couldn't, he sold the rights. I expected extreme changes in mood for Escape from L.A. in either the world or the tone when I went to see this film, because I knew this about the director at the time, and therefore it wasn't such a shell shock for me. So if you are expecting this sequel to be totally different adventure for Snake and new situations in an established world with the same tone, that is not what you get in this movie. A lot of it is familiar. Snake has to get a person that has a thing, and he's got to go up against a leader surrounded by many in a world with no morality, and he must make alliances with some unsavory people. It is a retread of the first film. However, unlike the first one, it takes a completely satirical approach, and Carpenter mocks the first film like Joe Dante did for Gremlins 2. It is just zany and unbelievable, like having a helicopter land into a mob of people, which could be seen from above, and it lands while the guy inside the helicopter is surprised when the craft is mobbed. Then there are big actors from the past playing extreme personalities for movie lovers like myself, particularly the awesome and gorgeous Pam Grier, whom I adore. But in this movie, she plays the opposite of what she is known for. Instead of being one of the most drop-dead gorgeous and lethal women of the 70s, she plays a drop-dead gorgeous transsexual who fights just as good as Snake and can turn his head.
I said to John, why can't we just take a character that's a transsexual and just make him a guy that Snake kind of likes. A guy, girl, he, she, which that's for that, Hershey is the name of the character. So John started laughing. He started liking the idea of this character.
Thus, like the film, she plays herself, but in a completely different way. That, in a nutshell, for me, explains this entire film. A perfect example of this is Snake is constantly outwitted in a lot of the movie. The problem is, they go too far at times. For instance, I think the surfboard scene, which is considered a popular action set piece, is just hokey, and it takes me out of the film every time I see it. I felt like I was watching Snake auditioning for Point Break, or a Gidget beach party film.
No way! Yes way!
In the end, it all comes down to taste. If you want to be subverted and have a jab at Snake Plisken's first film, it's perfect, especially if you enjoy crazy antics and tongue-in-cheek jokes. But on the opposite side of that view, if you want Snake taken seriously and want to respect the darkness and dread of the world he lives in, instead of laughing at it, you will hate this. For me, I am one of those who want to take Snake seriously and the world he's in. I want to feel that his danger is real and he's not perfect. I loved when Snake was tricked by the holograms in the beginning of L.A., but I hated stuff like the motorcycle wheelies and flying into a back of a truck perfectly. He's not a superhero or Super Dave.
One, go. All right, we're stopping. No, we're not.
However, I really respect Russell and Carpenter for having the guts to make the movie this way before it was insultingly popular and lazy to do so. In the era from 2016 to 2024, it seemed the only way writers could tell a story, and it got old quick, as all the heroes from the past were deconstructed in pathetic, lazy ways. Carpenter deconstructed his world and made it more campy, but he didn't do this to his characters and ruin them. Now, I reference Gremlins 2, and Escape from L.A. is similar, except that L.A. copied the first film and spoofed it, where Gremlins 2 spoofed the first film with a different story, which was a better approach, in my opinion. John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors of the 80s, and this should be obvious because he is the only director my channel has made a dedicated series on at the date of this recording. Knowing that, Carpenter has always been firm in the opinion that Escape from L.A. is better than Escape from New York. Escape from L.A. is better than the first movie, 10 times better. It's got more to it. It's more mature. It's got a lot more to it. I think some people didn't like it because they felt it was a remake, not a sequel. Far be it for me to disagree with one of my favorite directors, but I must. L.A. is a lot of fun, but I can't agree with his assessment. Production value may be better, but it's not better than New York by a long shot. Because my standard is story, characters, and believability. Escape from L.A. is a bunch of skits within an existing story where people fill the same roles as the first film to an almost carbon copy level. The film has some amazing moments like the Bangkok rules scenes, which I love, but then it has moments that counter such things, like being huge targets while hand gliding and not getting hit by bullets. After Escape from L.A., Carpenter and Russell planned to do another Escape film. This time it was titled Escape from Earth. It started right after Escape from New York. After activating the Damocles, the world would fall into anarchy, war, and desperation. Then Snake would literally escape from Earth. Escape from Earth was kind of Snake Plisken in a space capsule flying interstellar, so there'd be a lot of special effects in it, which I never care about much, but that's what it would look like. In 2000, plans for a 100-episode television series was proposed by Russell, Carpenter, and Hill, in which the three would produce and Snake would be played by another actor, but no studio would commit to the idea. And since we are at the year 2000, it's time we addressed Ghosts of Mars. A lot of sources, whether YouTube or articles, claim that Ghosts of Mars was an intended sequel for Snake Plisken that was altered to fit fit new characters. However, there is one big problem with this. Ghosts of Mars producer Sandy King Carpenter, who was Carpenter's wife, was asked on Twitter if Ghosts was an adapted Snake sequel. Her response tweet was, "No." As time went on, Russell got older. Russell stated age was a factor to him playing the character again. "I never wanted to do Snake old. If you're going to do him young. He's one of those guys." He also said this about returning to Snake and the tie-ins that involve him.
"I come from a different era. I wasn't interested in expanding financially off of something that we had created or that I had created in terms of a character. And I get business people, sure. Oh, we could do this with that. We could do this with that, or we could do this with that. Let's go do something new. Let's go do something fresh. Let's go create another iconic character rather than saying, what can we bleed off of this iconic character?" And you don't look at them as iconic characters. I mean, they refer to them as that if they become that. You're just doing you're on a day-to-day running it, having a good time and trying to make it work.
When Escape from L.A. was released to cinemas, a tie-in comic called The Adventures of Snake Plisken that was about 20 pages was supposed to be released as well, but it was postponed for a few months and came out in January 1997. In it, Snake is trying to sell an engineered virus he stole. He's selling it in an illegal cigarette smoking house, and then the police arrive. Snake gets away, and then he kills the rat who sold him out by feeding the person the very virus he was trying to sell. Snake's escape is not smooth, though, as a robot is sent to hunt him down, and the robot is programmed to think like Snake Plisken. And the rest of the comic is Snake and the robot trying to erase each other. When the final confrontation arrives, Snake drives a pole through the robot's eye, and its system reboots. When it wakes, it thinks it is Snake Plisken, and states to Snake that it understands why he acts the way he does and agrees with his motivation. But Snake ices the robot and says, "I don't need competition." The next Snake Plisken tale was created by John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, and Kurt Russell. Around 2002, they began putting feelers out for audience engagement, and they were working on a video game. But the game never made it into the market, but you can see some of the demo footage on YouTube. They wanted to do an animated show, but it didn't work out as well. What made it to stores was the 4-part comic series called The Chronicles of Snake Plisken. This series tells the tale of a bunch of different characters intertwined to obtain JFK's car that he was killed in. And Snake gets involved in the mix with lots of betrayals and one-liners, and that's about it. The character has a long legacy, whether figures, being the documented inspiration of video game characters, as well as making other appearances in video games like Hunt Down, which has sequences with Snake and the Duke driving his car in the background.
Don't cross the Duke. Everybody knows that. Thanks. Nice patch, dude.
Snake continues to impact the culture in many ways. That alone says something about Escape from New York and its main character, Snake Plisken. And that leaves us to the end of our Escape from New York series. We also wanted to take a moment to let you know some of the titles we're planning to cover for the channel in the future. We will continue our Planet of the Apes coverage as promised with Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And then we intend to explore such films as The Last Starfighter, which was a request from some of our viewers, Disney's 1982 classic Tron. Rutger Hauer's The Hitcher will be our first video of our Hidden Gems series, which intends to be little films that you may or may not have seen that we highly recommend you do see. We also plan on exploring The Karate Kid and expect to see that one in May, alongside the release of The Karate Kid Legends. We even plan on having fun with Tango and Cash and looking at the sordid mess behind the scenes of that movie. Expect to see all these released before June. At least that's our intention. As for our John Carpenter series, the next installment will be The Thing, which I'm sure will be one of our longer series. But for now, our next video will be Aliens vs. Predator, and that releases tomorrow. I honestly wonder how Snake would do against the aliens, but I assume if I asked him, his answer would be something like this. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Super thanks helps, but sharing helps more.